Um, Welcome to week 6. And I know for some it's been a taxing week, but you can't give up. Um, and again, I'll go back to what I've said every time. I know there's times you you might have called me names for that you wouldn't call me right now, but then you got over it. Um, but I'm going to be real with you. In my feedback, I have to be real. And remembering that we're almost coming to the end of this race with evidence one. So I've got to make sure, to the best of my ability, that it's as prepared as you possibly can make it before it gets out of my hands and Dr. Revis's hands and goes to a third party outside reviewer that we have no control over, and that um, basically we don't know. We know who some of the reviewers are, but we don't know who's going to get your work. And I'll be honest with you, some are they're all stringent in their grading. Some camp out in areas more than others do. So that's why when Dr. Revis and I look at your work, we've worked with all of them so long that we know what they're going to look for. And so we try to get you past that point. We try to get you to where your work is accomplished, but at a minimum, it has to be proficient. So, we want to make sure that there's no callbacks, that they're not sending anything back. So that's why we're pushing you as hard as we can the first time, to get it in. Dr. Revis, I have to say that, it's about, I would say, about 75-25, 75%. It was from the very beginning, it was either, a score of a 40 to a 50 out of 50. I had some that nailed it the first time. I had a couple that, they were point on from the very beginning. The no APA errors, no grammatical errors. And I will have to say, some of you have made tremendous progress when it comes to that from the beginning to where you are now. Now, don't backslide on me just because I've bragged on you a little bit. Okay. Now, this task was a little challenging for a few of you, but you can't let it whip you. You got to take control of it, and you've got to move on, and you can, and you will. Brenda, not singling you out. I just sent you a message on email, so make sure you check your email message and do what I asked you to do on there. Did you hear me, Brenda? She's not listening. Anyway, I'll check with Brenda later. But somebody in Brenda's group, send her a text message and tell her to make sure she checks her email. I sent her a message on something.
She was froze for a minute.
Okay. Brenda, did you get my email?
Yes, sir, I did. I got it.
Send me that task.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can. Send me that task again, because with everything I was looking at, I could have just not realized that it was a review and another review, and I could have deleted it. So just send it to me again. That'll make life easier. Okay? Okay.
That was my apologies. Yes, sir. I sent it again, but I'll send it again to you as soon as this class is over.
No problem. Just send it to me. But the work, Dr. Revis, the action plans or the plans of action were strong. They directly related what their plan of action to their most pressing need. And a lot of times, in the past, we've had problems with where they didn't align. That was not the case with the group. Those were not the problems. I will tell you that because this is the culminating activity task for, the AAPSL, well, you've got to do task 5, but I mean, as far as the narrative work and, I think that's why it's so important. Don't get to a place and you've done task 1 and 2 and 3, and it looks like uh, a book off the press, and then get to task 4 and say, well, I'm tired, and just, don't let it, it needs a professional look. You need to make sure that, and you can go back and tweak it still if you feel like you need to. Make sure that when the evaluator is looking at your presentation, that they have no questions at all. Don't cut yourself short. I sent some on, but you still may want to go back and consider if you didn't put enough narrative in there, explaining, what the next steps are going to be. I would go back and I would fix that in there. You can always go back and tweak that and put it in there with your final submission when you put all of task 1 through 5 together, which we'll talk about that next week. Your Zoom team activity with the AAPSL, and I just say overall the AAPSL, you mainly looked at task 1, 2, and 3, but the overall AAPSL, the leadership was amazing. You came prepared. You led well. You kept everybody on task. You had done your homework prior to the meeting, and I was pleased with everybody. Dr. Revis, everybody stayed on task. It was all about the AAPSL. Just some really good comments, and I could tell from many of the comments how much you have grown and how much you already realize. Remember day 1 when I said literally to take off the teacher hat and put on the principal hat? Many of you already are seeing what I was talking about that day, and it came out in your discussions. I can't remember who it was, but one of the groups and somebody spoke up and said, I'm already realizing that in some situations, as I'm doing my internship and those responsibilities, I'm having to completely separate myself as a teacher sometimes. And you already are realizing why your principal, your assistant principal, why they do some of the things that they do, that before the question mark was there. I don't understand this, why. Now you're beginning to understand that role, and you should, by now. So overall, I'm pleased with the work that you've done up to this point. There's a few of you that you've got to catch up, and we're working with you to get there. So do what you're supposed to do, because I think we've done what we're supposed to do, Dr. Revis and me. Dr. Revis, any comments at this point?
I don't think so. I just want to congratulate you for almost being finished with the AAPSL. Dr. Stedman's going to talk to you about a reflection piece, which is in task 5. And you're going to be glad to know that you do not have to convene your PLC. That's something that you're going to do. And I just encourage you to take time when you're completing task 5 to think and reflect on the ways that you've grown through your internship, your clinicals, and through the coursework. And pat yourself on the back for that.
Dr. Revis, I'm going to go ahead and bring that up, and we're going to, let me find where my helpful hints document is. Oh, here we are. Okay. Okay, I'm referring to your helpful hints document, but I'm going to refer to some other documents as well. Let's go ahead and just this is the last task of the AAPSL. This is the last task that you'll do. And remember, you don't have to meet with your PLC on this task. As Dr. Revis said, you don't have to do peer reviews on task 5. Hallelujah, right? You got a reprieve from peer reviews this week. Oh, with peer reviews, some of you backslid on me this week. You backslid. I did not get the quality peer reviews that I should get from you. Um, when you start back with the AAPSL, I will expect that I will expect you to redeem yourselves, and you know who you are. So, pick back up on that. Some of you, they were perfect. So just make sure. Task 5, candidates are going to reflect. And that's exactly what it is. You're going to think back on the last 5-6 weeks. You'll be working this week as well. You're going to look back on, from day one when you started this program up until, when you do this task. You're going to think about your experience. That it's a twofold experience. You're going to look at it from the perspective of your clinical internship and what you have done, outside the classroom setting. When I say classroom setting, I'm referring to the Gardner Webb classroom setting. What have you done to meet those needs that you're going to submit to Dr. Revis? And she'll talk about them a little bit later on again. What have you done to meet those 100 hours? And that involves, some of it involves working with the AAPSL, but some of it is working, in those other areas that Dr. Revis is going to talk about. You've got to talk specifically about what you did. Now, remember, you have to do 12 competencies this time. 8 of them, and they're outlined in there. 8 of them are you're told you've got to do these 8. Now, out of the 21, you can choose. Out of the rest of them, you can choose any 4 that you want to do. So that's 12 competencies that you've got to reflect on for task 5. The 8 required and 4 that you choose. Now, out of 21, that's 12. How many does that leave? That's 9. I saw Heather move her mouth. That's 9. So when are you going to do those other 9? When you do the AAPSL at the end of the AAPSL, you're doing 12 this time. You're going to do 9 with task 4 when you do the AAPSL. So you're going to reflect on your experience by critically assessing your personal development. When Shaquita looks at this, Shaquita's going to look at, what have I done? How have I grown? When it comes to each of the 12 competencies, you're going to assess yourself and you are going to narratively talk about that. You're going to say that, during my clinical experience, and you need to make sure that you delineate that so that I see it and the reviewer sees it. I would say start it out. First paragraph. You're going to have 2 paragraphs for each of the competencies. Okay, a minimum of 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph: during my clinical experience, and it doesn't matter which order you put them in, as long as there's consistency throughout. If you start out with your clinical experience, make sure for each one you do that subsequently after that. Or if you start out with your coursework, then say, in my course. But you're going to say, in my clinical experience, and then you're going to complete it with that. Now, make sure. Now we don't need a dissertation on each one, but we need enough information and enough relevant examples of how you have met that competency that it's not minimal. You've got to, minimal is proficient. You want to make sure that you're accomplished. So you need to make sure that when you write that you are convincing the evaluator. Now, I've done what I'm supposed to do this, up to this point in this semester in the class, to say I have met that competency. Make sure that you are detailed enough. Dr. Revis, I would say that, when you're talking about when you're talking about communication, talk about how you have communicated, in your clinical experience. Talk about how you have met that competency. I wouldn't just put one little thing. I would talk about a couple of things and maybe three things, as long as it doesn't become cumbersome and too much. What do you think, Dr. Revis?
I think so too. And I know that you are counting some of your hours from the work of the AAPSL for your clinical, but for purposes of this reflection, those truly need to come from your clinical work, things outside of the AAPSL. The evaluators will look for you when you talk about reflecting on things, they'll look for that, things that you are doing as a clinical intern.
Right.
Okay.
Those are those leadership things that I would talk
Mhm.
as much about leadership in there as I possibly could.
Yes. Yes.
When you talk about those other things, that will go in your folio, but I would not let that be my reflection too much. I would make sure my reflection was predominantly on leadership opportunities. Wouldn't you, Dr. Revis?
I would. And also, we're going to connect this to your competency folio. You need to reflect upon things in both the APSL and the clinical for which you have an artifact, a thing.
And some of them you may have them in what you're submitting to me for task 5, and you may use some of the same information for
Yes.
Dr. Revis. So, and she'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. But for the 12 competencies, remember, you're going to do two things. You're going to say, in my clinical experience, and then you're going to say, in my coursework, I. And I would begin it that way. Wouldn't you, Dr. Revis?
Oh,
And,
definitely.
you know,
Definitely. The evaluators will look for that.
and just make sure, in my coursework, I. And you're going to talk about your leadership opportunities in your coursework of how you have met that competency, and you're going to talk about how you met that competency, um, as an intern, a principal intern. So again, the 12 competencies, and you've got them. They're listed. You've got them in Blackboard. But again, here's some examples. This is just some, and I'm not saying that these are the. You always start out. I would say, you start out introducing with a brief narrative, about your experience, and then you lead into the, like this person has done something similar. Then you start listing each one in boldface. Uh, to the left, and then you start talking about, this person did not um, say what I just said. It makes life easier, and I would simply say, in my clinical experience and in my coursework, and leave it at that. And now they did write down here, during my clinical experiences, they did that. But these are examples, you know, of each of those 12 competencies. Now, when you get to the end, you say, well, Dr. Stebbins, I'm not meeting with my PLC, so I won't have an agenda. I'm not having to present this to my principals. You probably won't have an appendices here, but you may have a reference section, because in your narrative work, you may make a reference to one of the researchers, or some of the research in there. That's okay as well. So if for some reason you do, then you would have a reference section. You don't have to, but I'm just saying, if you reference anything in your narrative work, you must put your uh, reference section down there. I'm going to show you now. Let me see. Let me look at that's the helpful hints. Let me come back. No, it's not it. Give me just a second, guys. I lost it. Let me see if this is, well, let me just pull it back up again. Let's look at your AAPSL template and material. Here it is. Template and material section. And let's go to, and I updated that today. And I'm going to tell you why. I looked in there and the example I had, and I don't know where it went. It didn't have task 5 in there. So I put a task 5 in there so that it would have it. So if you copied anything off, you will need to go back and look at that. And I'm going to bring it up to, let me bring it down to task 5. And Dr. Revis, this is Jeffries from last semester, the task 5 I put in there. He was pretty thorough. He still didn't do everything like I just said, you know, in my clinical experience, in my coursework, it's in there, but it's not as plain as that. I would just make it as plain as what I just said. Come on down. I'll get there in a minute. Here it is. Here's task 5. Okay, now Jeffrey started out on this. He said when reflecting, and when I put it in there, I didn't move that space back up. It should be double spaced in there. But he talked about it, task 5 and the 2 experiences, and then he started out communication, and then this is where you would say, he says as school leaders, but I would say, in my clinical experience, and then during the AAPSL process, I learned how. Then he goes on to say, you see, he's put several change management. He talks about as society changes, this is basically his clinical experience. And then he goes on to talk about, in his coursework, what he did. But I mean, these are some examples. And again, they're only examples, but they give you an idea of, how you can get started. Remember, for these 12 competencies, you do not put any artifacts in there. That does not go, only narrative work. You're only going to write about your experiences narratively for task 5. And that's pretty much, that's all you have to do. That's all you have to do for me this week, at this point, start getting, pulling it all together. I'm going to talk to you next week about how to pull it all together, put it into one document, and we pretty much, all of us should be able to submit, Dr. Revis, about the same time the way I'm doing it this time. I think we'll do better if we just wait. So I'm not going to tell anybody this week that it's okay to go ahead and submit the Turnitin. Don't go there. Don't even look at it. Don't even touch Turnitin yet. Pretend that it's not there until I can meet with you next Tuesday. Now,
and let me re-emphasize that one more time, Dr. Stedman. You can only use Turnitin one time. So I know some of you are real zealous and want to get ahead and want to check your Turnitin. Don't do it. Don't do it, because
you're not going to get a
use
report
it one
from
time.
it anyway. Only I get a report. You will not get. All you do is submit it to it when I tell you it's ready. You won't get anything from Turnitin unless I share something with you because there's a need to. All the report that I get, it'll come to me, and I will be able to look at it, and I will be able to see if there's any problems anywhere. And if that's the case, I will meet with you personally along with Dr. Revis. We will meet with you personally one-on-one if there's a problem. And we hope that there's not going to be a problem. But when you look at your agenda under week 6, for task 4, this is important that you pay attention to this. When you look at task 5. Now remember, A final review of task 4 is due to me no later than Thursday of this week. I need to have task 4 cleared, and 75% of you have already cleared task 4. You're there. So, but I need task 4 cleared and out off your plate by Thursday of this week. That means that if you've got to do a presentation still, you need to get that done. And I need to, when you submit it to me, I need to be able to look at it and make sure everything's clear so you can get ready for a final submission with that. AAPSL Task 5. Okay. Your due date for that is going to be a little bit differently than what your normal due dates are, and I'm going to tell you why. I need to see task 5 no later than Saturday by 6:00 p.m. And I'm going to tell you why. Not Sunday, Saturday, because you're not sending this for peer review. You're only sending it for instructor review. You're not having to do any peer reviews with this. And this gives me a chance to look at it between now and Saturday. You don't have to wait until Saturday. If you get it through, go ahead and send it to me. This gives me a chance to look at it and make sure that everything is good, or if there's edits that need to be made, I can get it back to you, and I'll get it back to you Saturday night. I won't go to bed until I look at everything. And then that gives you from then until, Sunday at 6:00, if you need that time to make any revisions or edits that you need to do. So that gives you time to get it in time, because you're going to submit it for a final grade on Sunday afternoon. So I need it for review no later than Saturday at 6:00, and then you will submit it for a final grade no later than 6:00 on Sunday. Dr. Revis, can you think of anything else? I'm going to turn you over in just a minute to talk about. I need you to look at on your. Let me bring that up. Let me share again. I know seems like I'm rambling, but I'm really not. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm covering every base. Here it is. Okay. On your agenda, and you've got a copy of this under week 6. I've done week 6 responsibilities, and but this is week 7. I've already put week 7 on there. We'll talk about your case study next week. Dr. Revis is going to talk about your 100 hours of clinical internship and your competency folio, and they will be submitted at different times. Your week 7, your 100 hours are going to be due week 7, and then your competency folio will be due week 8, or you can submit it before if you're through, but no later than week 8. And Dr. Revis is going to talk to you about that. And I put week 8 responsibilities on there as well. Go ahead and mark on your calendars, because this is a little bit of change from what we started out. Your required town hall and coaching session 5 all going to be on that Monday night, instead of having something on a town hall Monday and a coaching session on Thursday. Thursday will be open for you. We're going to do it all on that night. We're going to start at 6:30 instead of 7:00, so that we can cover the town hall, and that is just bringing closure to the AAPSL. Anything that Dr. Lamb needs to say about the program to you, and then that gives us an hour to be able to fully introduce you to the work of the AAPSL. There's some things that we won't have to go over this time that we did with the AAPSL, because you will already have you already know what to do there, but we'll reiterate that. And then just another thing, this is a reminder, week 10 will be your spring break. That is for just we won't come to class that week, but you still have to do the work that is due that week. We just won't come to class that week. You'll have that week, that you can work independently, or you can work with your Zoom team if you need to. But this is all in there for you to go ahead and print out and put on your calendar and get ready for. Dr. Revis, if you would, let's go ahead and talk about how all of these next 2, 3 weeks, week 6, week 7, and 8, um, reflect the work that they've got to do for you.
Okay. I'm going to go back and pull up the in your clinical link. No, I'm sorry. It's in your handbooks. Competency MSA handbooks and materials. I'm going to pull that up. And I wanted to go to the example, and you have this. I've showed it to you before. And we're going to go through this. But I also want to I want to pull back up that template as you're looking at task 5. I just want you to work smart, and going to show you how to connect what you're doing in task 5, if I may, to what you are going to do in your competency folio. So I'm going to scroll all the way down.
I'm glad you're pulling it up anyway, because they need to see that at the bottom of that template. That's where all of the information about the competencies are at the end.
All right.
Good.
All right. Here are your 21. Here's a comprehensive list of your 21. It's at the very end of that template. All right. So by the time you finish this semester, you're going to have a reflection. You're going to have a reflection in your coursework for every one of these. And you're going to have an artifact in your competency folio for every one of these. Here are the 8 required ones that everybody has to do for task 5. Okay. Everybody has to do these. And then you select 4 additional competencies. I'm just going to try to show you how to work smart on this. So everybody has to do communication. So let's look at communication. Remember that we talked about last time how important it was. Do not take this out. This is your description that stays in your competency folio. And it says here, by the end of your program, you've got to have an artifact for the AAPSL, PSYOP, and open-ended. Well, this is one of your required ones. When it says AAPSL, that means from your AAPSL, not your clinical that you're doing. That means from your AAPSL. Okay? So everybody's got to do that one. The next one is change management. So I'll pull change management up. That one says AAPSL also. The reason I'm going through this is it does not all align. Okay? Again, write your reflection, and then you do the artifact. It would be nice if your reflection that you did in task 5 has an artifact that you can also upload. And then that way you can use the same description.
And Dr. Evans, I would, if they do align, like if change management aligns for what you're doing for me, task 5, and it aligns for what you're doing for Dr. Revis, the competency folio, while you're doing my work, go ahead and put that artifact in a bank somewhere. Put it in a bank somewhere, in a file somewhere, so that when you get to Dr. Revis's work, you don't have to search for something, you've already got it. Again, that's working smart that Dr. Revis is talking about.
The next one's delegation. So let's go down and look at delegation. Again, that one you pull from your coursework, AAPSL. Think about delegation. For example, when you did your action plan, you guys delegated certain roles to individuals. Write that up. And what artifact could you use? Your action plan. But if you use it here, that's the only time you can use your action plan as an artifact. So be very conscious of all of that. The next one is dialogue inquiry. Now, this one, I don't know why, but this one doesn't come from the AAPSL. So for your competency folio, you're going to pull from your open-ended. Well, you've already written in task 5 a description of how you met dialogue and inquiry in your clinical open-ended work. So again, that's the artifact you put here. Okay, can you see the connections? The next one is judgment. I'm not going to go through all these. I just wanted to give you a couple of examples. Let's see, it's right here. This is another one. It doesn't say AAPSL. So you're going to pull your description and artifact from task 5 from open-ended.
Dr. Revis, take all the time you need because this is all we're doing tonight.
All right.
What we're doing. So take your time they need to understand this.
All right. The next one is systems thinking. Well, that one does come from the AAPSL. So pull your reflection from your AAPSL with an artifact. Now, don't forget, make sure you put right here, this is spring 2024 AAPSL. That gives your CC2 an opportunity to very quickly see what description goes with what artifact, and you should label your artifact and name it the same way that you name your description.
Dr. Revis, go back to dialogue inquiry. I just thought about something. Oh, that's
Sure.
open-ended. That's going to be open-ended. Now, you need to know when you're doing my work, the 12 competencies, the narrative work. You need to know which one of those are, go ahead and know ahead of time which one of those are open-ended and which one of them are from the AAPSL. It's going to be one of the two, the AAPSL or open-ended. While you're even with the open-ended, go ahead and figure out while you're doing my work. Now, I've got to use this for Dr. Revis. Where can I pull my artifact and already have your artifact for your open-ended ready as well? That way, when you get to Dr. Revis's work, a lot of it is going to be, I mean, it's just a matter of just pulling it and putting it together.
Exactly. All right. And then technology. Boy, that's a pretty easy one to use. Let's see where it's telling you to pull that one from. Okay, where are you going to have to pull this one from? Heather, I see you on the screen. Where will you have to pull this one from?
Open-ended, your clinical work.
Open-ended. Your clinical work. Very good. Now, don't forget, this one naturally is going to be a digital learning competency that when you're doing your competencies, you have to weave that digital learning in your other 21 competencies. Okay. And I think I've got one more of the required. Visionary. Let's see what it looks like. It doesn't come from your clinical, from your AAPSL either. It would be nice because the whole concept of the AAPSL, I think, is visionary, being a visionary leader. So you're going to pull this from open-ended, something from your clinical. Do you see your connections? Now, how do you know where to pick those other 4 from? I don't think a required one was creative thinking on there. Nope. Let's take a look at creative thinking and see where you're supposed to pull those from. That's from the AAPSL. So go down your list, open up every one of them. If it tells you it's something from the AAPSL, go ahead, pick that as one of your 4 optional that you're going to write about in task 5. Okay. I don't think customer focus was one of them. And it's not from the AAPSL. So move on. Delegation, dialogue inquiry was, let's check emotional intelligence. No. But look, there's one from the APTEL, which you'll do later this semester. Let's look at environmental awareness. No. Global perspective. No. Judgment. No. Organizational ability. There's one. So you've already seen there's 3 of you 4 right now that you need to write about or select for task 5. So you're working smart. Since personal ethics, I think that's where I got to. Personal ethics, no. Personal responsibility, there's your 4th one for your APSL. Okay. Now, there may be more in here for the APSL. That one's not. That one's not. So see, the rest of these you're going to have to fill in either with the APTEL. That systems thinking is one. And I think just about all of your APSLs about systems thinking, about all the different pieces of the action plan that has to come together.
Right. But Dr. Revis, so you're telling me that when I click on all 21 of them, digital competencies does not count because it's embedded in 18 of the others that you're doing. So when I click on the 21 competencies, if it says APSL, I automatically pull from my APSL this time out of the 12.
Correct.
And
That's correct.
if it doesn't say APSL, my only other option is open-ended, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
You've got 2 options: APSL, open-ended. That's it. Sparkle.
I just want, just for clarity, so when we're doing task 5, we also need to be, are you saying like kill 1 bird and 2 stones? Like do this folio too at the same time? Is that what you were saying?
You don't have to do it, but be conscious of it because you're going to have to do it the following week. Okay. So if you're doing, if you select time management as one of your optional ones, then do your reflection, get your artifact, and you're ready to go. You're ready to do your competency folio. Okay. Any other questions?
Dr. Revis, thank you. Because I honestly, if you will do what Dr. Revis has asked you to do, when you get ready to do her work that she's got to review, then honestly, it will not take you a long time if you have worked smart and you pulled that information together when you're doing my work.
Just do a little pre-planning is all I'm saying. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, Dr. Revis, what about their now they've got week 8 is when that is due. Week 7 is when their their internship log is due. They've got to can you show again, remind them of what they've got to turn into you that week at the end of
Okay,
week 7.
sure. Let's go back and look. I'm going to now go down and look at my clinical internship resources.
Dr. Revis, and am I correct? When they submit this work to you, their 12 competencies, their artifacts for their 12 competencies, and they turn in their 100 hours for internship up to this point, they only send it for your review only. Am I right? Not evaluation.
Right. You put it in your competency folio at the end of the competency folio. Do not put it where you're going to upload your AAPSL for evaluation from the outside evaluator in your DRF folio. Okay.
And when it'll say in there for review, it'll have Dr. Revis's name, it'll have Dr. Hamilton's name, it'll have my name or whatever. Only submit for Dr. Revis's review. Do not click on my name on the things that you're sending to her to review. Okay.
And we can go over that a little bit on next week before you get ready
Right.
to ask for me to review. You have to
Right.
physically click on my name to ask me to review something in your competency folio.
We can show them next week that, Dr. Revis, right?
Okay. Yes.
We can show them.
All right. This is something, again, you can take this, take out all this stuff. You must, who can tell me what columns are required? Somebody raise your hand, or I guess I'll just call on somebody. Macy, can you tell me which columns you must fill out?
Activity, hours, and area, and the date.
Very good. Starting here, date, activity, area. These you don't have to, and the hours. Okay. Notice how every activity is described. The first word is a verb showing your level of participation. Whether you co-led, met, researched, prepared, supervised, worked with, developed, that gives me an idea of how engaged and how you were involved in the activity.
So, Dr. Revis, are you telling me I can't just put in there worked on the AAPSL 10 hours?
No. Your AAPSL tasks have to be specific if you're going to count them. For example, here's the first one. Prepared agenda, send out invitations for the first PLC meeting for task 1. Now, I said that took me 2 hours. I'm a slow person if that takes me 2 hours. I was just trying to make stuff up. But you know how much time it took you. Up here, met with principal to discuss the scope of the AAPSL work, receive permission, and discuss PLC members. You're not going to get an hour with your principal there, but again, I put that down. If you have 0.5 hours or 0.75, count it. Count it in those decimal hours. Okay. So I can see very clearly from here how many hours you're getting from task 1. And then I go down here and look at task 2 because you have limits. And don't forget, I'm going to really look at this supervision stuff. The S's, I physically add them up this first time. How many total for the whole semester of S's may you have? Anybody?
How many fingers do
Becca?
I have? I'm
Becca's
cheating.
right, 10. She's on up her 10 fingers. So, here's 1 hour, and up here is 0.75. So this person's done a good job. Up here is a supervising. Okay. I'm going to add those together. And if you have over 5 hours, I'll make a comment about it. I won't tell you to take it off now because you can have no more than 10 in the semester. You are unlimited on your leadership. That's where the majority need to come from. Okay. And you see, I have a few technical through there. Just take a bird's eye view when you categorize activity is leadership, supervision, and technical knowledge. It gives you a bird's eye view of how well you're distributing your time in your clinical work. And I need to see how many hours do I need to see for that. Leanne, when you first turn it in week 7, at the end of week 7.
100 hours.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Dr. Revis, so for my work with the AAPSL, because there were 5 tasks, so that means that I can have up to 50 hours if I can validate that, right? Okay,
Yes.
well, I'm not meeting with my PLC with task 5, but I am having to work to do what Dr. Stedman needs for task 5, and I'm also trying to work smart so that I can pull what I need for Dr. Revis's competency folio. Can I count that as towards my 10 hours for task 5 if it takes that?
Yes. I can I? You're making me rethink it. Let me go get to another document here. This one is in your clinical resources too. Guys, the reason I'm second guessing myself is because we only started this in this fall semester. I think this is it. And I always use the resources. If I forget something, this is where I go.
I do too.
Okay, here we go. You're the 3 semester. All right, here we go. Task 1 limit is 10, 10, 10, 10. Task 5, 10 hours. Evidence, and you can count 5 hours for building your competency folio. Okay.
Okay.
So even though you're not really showing leadership, you are working on task 5 and doing those reflections. We were very generous in giving you 10 hours for doing that reflection. That's why it needs to be in depth. And that's why you have to do a reflection for each competency for both your clinical and your coursework.
Okay. Sparkle has her hand raised.
Sparkle?
If we have to attend like principal leadership meetings, like I've been doing like Title I stuff, like 16, that all falls under leadership, right?
Yeah, I want to speak because I'm talking about
I definitely would think that the leadership meetings would. The other meetings, I would say, if it is for school leadership, yes. Title I, you could have Title I teachers. It depends on what you're doing with Title I. I mean, it could be parent involvement, but it's all about what you're doing in that meeting. Okay.
Right.
Action you were
Dr.
doing.
Revis, be careful, Sparkle, and all of you, be careful that if it is something that you would normally do if you were not in this program. If you had to do it anyway, then be careful with those kinds of things, because that comes across more of your daily requirements and responsibilities. Dr. Revis might can look at a little bit with that, but she couldn't look at a lot of that. It's just like an IEP. You if you're Leanne's an EC teacher, so Leanne would go to a lot of IEPs. She leads that, but we can't count all her work with IEPs because that's what she does anyway. And if you are a regular ed teacher and you attend an IEP as a regular, we might count that one time, but we're not going to count that 3 times, right, Dr. Revis?
Right. And again, it's about what you're doing in that meeting.
Right.
We're
Now,
looking for leadership opportunities.
Now, if it's a Title I meeting, you have to have a Title I meeting where parents are invited out, and that stuff. If you can get on the agenda, then that's an open-ended opportunity right there, and you can also count, that because you are part of the leadership team presenting to an audience. And an artifact would be the agenda, a picture of you presenting.
It could be.
Does that help,
Questions?
Sparkle?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Sparkle, I think you just think creatively with everything that's going on in Durham. You've had so many opportunities. You ought to be able to pick and choose what you want.
Yes, I've served a lot of jobs this semester.
Yeah. Michelle?
Okay, so I have two questions. The PLC meetings that we've led, that's considered leadership, right? The ones that we've been doing for our APSL?
Yes.
Okay, and also the peer reviews, can we count that as APSL work or technology?
I don't know if I've ever been asked that, Dr. Stedman. What do you think?
I think there might be some in there that's part of the APSL work, but you know, you've had to do them for 4 weeks. We're not going to count 4 weeks of that. We'll count some as part of your your APSL work. Yeah, we can count some. Wouldn't you think so, Dr. Revis?
Yeah, because I mean that's one of the purposes of the peer
Yeah.
reviews. That's a good question. I don't know
Yes,
that anybody's
Michelle.
thought of that one before. That's leadership,
It is.
practicing giving feedback to adults. So I would think, honestly, yeah, I would think definitely that time could count for each of those tasks.
And that would be under leadership because that's where you've got to have the most of your hours.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Revis, I would say reasonably, you think about it, Dr. Revis, because you're the one doing that. I would think maybe they could count 4 or 5 hours in the with working on their peer reviews for that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, for example, how I would write that up is prepared feedback, prepared formative feedback to PLC members on APSL Task 1.
Well, not PLC members. They're Zoom team members.
Zoom team members, thank you. Okay. Prepared formative feedback to Zoom team members, APSL Task 1. APSL Task, same thing, APSL Task 2, etc. Okay. You guys have got your wheels turning. That's great.
And
It's
that's
gonna-
good. And Michelle, what you would do, you would go back and look when those due dates were, and you would give yourself credit for that hour or whatever for the for the date that you had to submit that. That would be what you would put on there.
And that's gonna fall under the APSL 10 hours, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because it's taking you guys at least 30 minutes per feedback, right? At least. May have taken you a little bit longer when you first started. Good questions. Any more?
Okay.
Well, Dr. Seven, I think we've gone over this.
That
pretty
yeah, I
good
think
now.
so too. Yeah. I knew tonight was not going to be, and it shouldn't be. We're at a place where I think you understand where you should be. A lot of it's on you're on your own now. You know, for pretty much the rest of completing the APSL. I don't, for the most part, I don't see them having to come together with their PLC until they get back with the APTEL. Do you, Dr. Revis?
No.
So you're on your own. So you're working independently now. You're pulling it all together. And by next week, by next Tuesday, whenever I tell you how to pull it all together or just go through this process with you, Dr. Revis and I do, the majority of you will be ready to submit almost immediately once I get through with Tuesday. But I'm not going to go over that tonight because I think you've got enough to do without jumping the gun on that. And I think somebody will get trigger finger happy and you know want to do something, and excuse me, I ain't gonna let you. So don't think about turning in or anything like that until after we get through with what you've got to do for this week, and then I will take you through that process next week. Does everybody
So I
understand?
just had,
Go ahead, Dr. Revis.
I'm sorry. I just had an off tangent remark.
That's okay.
I was going to say, I need to see what Becca's shirt says. Stand up, Becca. Connecting data.
It's collecting data
Collecting
in my
data.
cardio.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, we had our big 3, 4, 5 data day after benchmark 1. So we do vertical planning and do that all day long, and then again on Thursday with K1 too.
Oh, I like that. Michelle, did you have
That's
another
awesome.
question?
Yeah, it's not for the good of the group, so if I could talk to Dr. Revis, when everyone's done.
Okay, we'll hold on. Just want to say that now again, let's just a quick reminder. You know what's due this week. You know what you've got to have by Thursday is task 4 completed and ready for me to sign off on that. Task 5, I need it no later than Saturday at 6 o'clock so that you can have it ready to do a final submission no later than 6 o'clock on Sunday. Work smart, not harder. And while you're doing my task 5, work on Dr. Revis's task work for the competency folio at the same time. And I think we've got you channeled. Take a deep breath, because honestly, this is a much less stressful week for you. If you owe me trying to get cleared with task 4 with some things, go ahead and get that off your plate, and so you don't have to stress over that anymore. We'll get through it. We'll get through it, I promise you. Okay?
Sparkle, did you have a question?
Well, he kind of answered it, but if somebody in the group would do it, I was going to ask if you could just kind of like send us an email, or somebody send us an email with like, it's like a lot to do. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything, but you said task 4 is due by Thursday, task 5
It's on
by
your
Saturday.
it's on your agenda under week 6. Everything.
Oh yeah,
Go back and look under that, print it out, and just note that it's on the agenda. Okay.
okay.
I'm always going to give you. Oh, just another thing too. Anytime I have not clear, if you don't get a 50 on something, that means there's still work that you've got to do. When it's in the review stage, if you don't see an attachment on there, then you need to let me know, because my mind I could have got distracted or whatever, and I forgot to put the attachment on there. But always know I'm going to give you an attachment with feedback on it if it's not cleared the review process. Okay? I'll otherwise, if you get a 50, that means that you probably won't get an attachment. I'll just tell you, complete the peer review process, blah blah blah. But if you don't get an attachment and you don't have a 50, that means you need to let me know, where's my attachment, Dr. Stedman? Because I've got it saved as a Word document and I just failed to put it on there for you. Okay? And don't wait. When you get my feedback, you should see, if you don't get a 50, immediately let me know, where's my attachment. Okay? Everybody good? You ready? Elisa, you feeling better?
Yes, I'm
Yeah, that's
cleared
good.
up now. I feel a whole lot better.
That's good. Let me see, who else was it? Michelle, not Michelle, Nicole, are you feeling better? Good, good. I don't know who, there were others. There's been a lot of sickness. I got people out in my office sick. Got a granddaughter sick. My wife was to go today. She couldn't go because one of the grandchildren's sick. So it's just a lot of sickness going around. But y'all be careful and stay safe. Okay? Dr. Revis, thank you so much for your input tonight, as always.
You're welcome. Who needed to stay and talk to me? Was it Heather?
It was
It was me, Michelle.
Michelle.
Michelle, okay.
Okay, so I've got I don't know if it's a unique situation or not.